गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुस्साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. ओम 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 नारायण. In the misconception about Shankara, we shall proceed with the next point, that is sixth point. In the sixth point, Swamiji says, there is a sixth misunderstanding. The sixth misunderstanding is this, that Shankara's main purpose of writing his bhashyas is to refute Buddhism. Okay? People say Shankara's main aim was to refute Buddhism. This is a very strange. Why strange? In fact, this is very, very prevalent. In all the books, everybody talks of the same. Everybody, I tell you. It's a very unfortunate thing. It's a very prevalent misunderstanding. What they say is, see, Shankara and Gaudapada, the main chief aim of Sri Gaudapada and Sri Shankaracharya is to counteract the influence on people's mind of the prevailing Buddhism. I just explain little more detail. They means the prevalent misunderstanding says that Buddhism was very prevalent in India during Shankaracharya's time. This is a very totally wrong view. Okay? One is, Buddhism was very prevalent in Shankara's time. Okay? It is not true. Buddhism was not so prevalent during Shankaracharya's time. The reason, if you see, in Shankara Vijayas as well as in Bhashyas, the time Shankara devoted for refuting Buddhism is very little. In the space I am talking, the space given to refutation of Buddhism is very little in the entire Prasthanatraya Bhashyas. Rarely once or twice he refutes Buddhism. But more often, Shankaracharya spends his time in refuting various other traditions within Hinduism. Even if you take the Shankara Vijayas, particularly Madhaviya Shankara Vijaya, which is the most prevalent, most popular in India. It says, a very strange thing, the book is a very strange book. In the beginning it says that Buddhism is very prevalent and all the devatas went to Shiva and prayed to them and told that, you see, Buddhism has become prevalent, Vaidika Dharma is going to die shortly. Oh God, you descend here and save us. All the gods go and pray to Shiva. And Shiva says that, okay, I shall come down and then do. They say, Shankaracharya along with Brahmadeva, along with others, they come here only to uphold the Vaidika Dharma and counteract Buddhism, save Hinduism from the clutch of Buddhism. This is what the book says, okay, in the beginning. But you see the contradiction in the Shankara Vijaya. Go inside. Shankaracharya travels all over India to refute the various scholars. How many scholars did he refuse? Did you see them? Have you read Shankara Vijaya? Kumarila Bhatta he meets, but didn't have any discussion. Kumarila Bhatta talks as if he was a Vedantin already. He had a soft corner for Shankara and all that. But Shankaracharya went to Kumarila Bhatta not to refute his karma kanda according to the book. The book says which is unacceptable. But Shankaracharya goes to Kumarila Bhatta not to debate with him and refuse his karmana mokshvada, not to refuse the view of attaining moksha by karma alone without needing a knowledge, without requiring knowledge. Not to refute this. The book says, unfortunately, he went there to get, and he tells Shankaracharya how he regrets it. Oh, I am very sorry that you have covered yourself with that husk which is slowly getting burnt. I am very much disappointed. I came here with an intention to get, Vartika on my Brahma Sutra Bhashya written by you. Shankara goes to Kumarila Bhatta to get Vartika written by him. He didn't say he is going to refute Kumarila. Shankara Vijaya talks like this. Okay. Then coming to Mandana Mishra. The Shankara held a debate with Mandana Mishra, but Mandana Mishra was a karmakandi. Karmana moksha. Okay. That's all. These are the two main people Shankara meets in his travel tour all over India. But there is no single Buddhist scholar Shankara met. No single Buddhist scholar or any other scholar Shankara meets, debates and defeats. No way. But in the beginning he says Buddhism is so prevalent, Vedic Dharma is going to die and all that. But if Buddhism were so prevalent, and it is and Vedic Dharma is on the verge of death, then Shankaracharya should have debated with Buddhists. But there is no single debate. Therefore, these are all prevalent misunderstandings spread by some people without knowing the reality. Okay? Even the Shankara Vijayas do not come to their rescue to present this misunderstanding that Buddhism was prevalent. Shankara's and Gaudapada's main aim was to refute Buddhism. Both these are wrong. First, Buddhism was not so prevalent. And Shankara, Gaudapada do not devote time to refute Buddhism. Time and space. In their life, you don't see the event. In their writings also, you don't find. Okay? Shankara was mainly refuting the internal Vaidika Dharma. Within the Vaidika Dharma, there are Dvaita, Advaitavadin. Who are they? After Jnana, Prasankhyanavadi. Within the Vaidika Dharma, within the Advaitas alone, there are various traditions, various misunderstandings. He was interested in correcting those misunderstandings within the Vaidika Dharma. So, his main aim was to purify the Vaidika Dharma from its own internal misunderstandings. This is a very strange, nobody knows. And Swamiji has to say this. Because both in his life, the prevalent Shankara Vijayas and in Prasthanatrayi Bhashya talk of the same thing. And one more in Sutra Bhashya, Sankhya is said to be Pradhanamalla. Pradhanamalla means the main opponent, the main rival. The chief rival was Sankhya. But in Shankara Vijayas, Shankaracharya never met a Sankhya scholar and never debated with Sankhyas. Though in Sutra Bhashya he says Sankhya is his chief rival. So, if you look at the Prasthanatrayi Bhashya, a new picture emerges which is totally different from the prevalent idea about Shankara, the main, chief aim of Gaudapada and Shankara. Therefore, Swamiji has specifically raised this topic and refuted this misunderstanding. Okay? Another point. Buddhism was not so prevalent because people say that Shankaracharya alone should refute Buddhism. Okay? Advaitins alone refute it. I tell you, there were many others who refuted Buddhism. Who shall I tell you? One is Nayayika. That is Nayayika Vaisheshikas. Second, Sankhyas. Third is Mimamsakas, Karmakandis. Fourth is within the Buddhism, internal various schools within the Buddhism, okay? They also challenged Buddhism. Like Kshanika Vijna, there are mainly three. Bhashya Satyatvavadi, the realist, idealist, nihilist. There are three. Okay? One is realist within Buddhism. Second is idealist within Buddhism. Third is nihilist Shunyavadi. Shunyavadi, Vijnanavadi, Bhashya Satyatvavadi. Realist is Bhashya Satyatvavadi. Realist. So, within Buddhism there were three schools. They were mutually refuting each other. Why attribute everything to Shankara alone? Shankara alone defeated and wiped out Buddhism from India. This is totally false. So, there were discussions, debates continuously held. So, within Buddhism there are internal rivalries. Internal rival schools of Buddhism were also trying to refute Buddhism. Okay. Then the fifth one is Jainism. So, let us say 5. Okay. One is Nyaya Vaisheshika. You can see the Nyaya Vaisheshika literature, how they tried to refute Buddhism. If you see Nyaya Vaisheshika, two things. What is that? Ishvara Astitvam. Nyaya Vaisheshikas tried to establish existence of Ishvara, existence of Atma, because Buddhism denies both existence of Atma and existence of Ishvara. So, Nyaya Vaisheshikas spent their time to prove existence of Ishvara and existence of Atma. Okay? Then, therefore, they debated with Buddhism. Sankhyas also debated. Mimamsakas also debated. Mimamsakas debated with Buddhism, trying to prove two things. Mimamsakas' main was Veda is a pramana. No human being as an individual can be sarvajna. All jnanam comes from Veda, not from a human being. Mimamsakas' main, Buddhism told that Buddha is a sarvajna. Buddha is omniscient. So Mimamsakas' main aim was to show how a human individual cannot be omniscient. It is the Veda, Shruti Pramana that is omniscient. Therefore, Mimamsakas tried to uplift the validity of Veda. Second point is existence of Atma. This is common to Nyaya Vaisheshikas and Mimamsakas. They together fought on this point. Atma exists independent of the body, takes. See, Mimamsakas say, both Mimamsakas as well as Nyaya Vaisheshikas say that Atma exists independent of the body. As long as it does karma, it assumes another body, various janmas, goes to various lokas according to karmas. And when it attains moksha, it becomes totally free from the world. Attaining the moksha is accepted by Nayayika, Vaisheshikas, and also Mimamsakas, some section of Mimamsakas. So, Atma's existence was strongly defended, and Anatta, absence of Atma, was refuted by Nyaya Vaisheshika on one side, Mimamsakas on the other side. These two people strongly defended. Even Sankhya's also accepted Atma. They too defended by refuting Buddhism. Even Jainism also, they accepted Atma. They also refuted Buddhism. Okay? Therefore, all these people have already debated with Buddhism. So Shankaracharya didn't have to spend time and space in refuting Buddhism. But the prevalent view in the society is Buddhism was dominant, Shankara came only to refute Buddhism. You don't find in Prasthanatrayi Bhashya so much importance given to Buddhism. He has been refuting many other schools within Vedic religion, and a small space he devotes to Buddhism also. It was not a chief aim. He was not a chief rival at all. This is the point, a misunderstanding prevalent in the society. Okay? So, there were 5 schools debating with Buddhism. I just now I told you, I repeat them. One is Nyaya Vaisheshika. Second is Sankhya. Third is Mimamsaka. Fourth is internal rivals within Buddhism. Fifth is Jainism. Then sixth comes Vedanta. Okay? So, when there were 3 people, 3 kinds of scholars, 3 class of scholars, 3 groups of scholars, 6 groups of scholars debating with Buddhism, why attribute it to Shankara alone, isolate him, Shankaracharya, which Shankaracharya never said in any of the Prasthanatrayi Bhashya. This is a very, very big misunderstanding. Okay? Okay? So what Swamiji says, let me see. I have given my own explanation. Now let me see what Swamiji says. Shankara's Bhashya proclaims that Vedanta was being misinterpreted by many Vrittikaras. Shankara mentions in Gita Bhashya and in other places that Upanishads have been misinterpreted, Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads have been misinterpreted by, even in Brahma Sutra, by certain schools among the Vedikas only. One is Dvaitadvaitavadi, Karmavadi, Dhyanavadi, these people. So Sankhya, these are all Vedika schools alone within the Vedic tradition who have misinterpreted Upanishads. So only to refute them, I am penning this commentary. Bhashyakara says in the beginning of his Gita Bhashya. You see his preface to Gita Bhashya. Okay? So he says, see that his commentaries, I read out this Swamiji's sentence once again. Bhashya proclaims that Vedanta was being misinterpreted by many Vrittikaras. Vrittikaras means brief commentators on Gita and Upanishads, even on Brahma Sutra. Okay? And that his commentaries, Shankara's own commentaries, were intended to restore the traditional way of interpretation. Shankaracharya's main aim was to restore the traditional Advaitic interpretation by refuting certain wrong misinterpretations, wrong ideas within the Vedantic tradition, Vedic and Vedantic tradition. When this is what Shankaracharya says in his writings, people say his chief aim was to Buddhism. Nowhere Shankara mentioned that Buddhism is so prevalent. Oh, wherever you go, only Buddhists are found. How I am very sad to see that. Did he ever say that this? I am very sad to see that wherever I go, only Buddhists are prevalent. Vaidika Dharma is getting wiped out. Oh, I have to restore it. Therefore, I debate with Buddhists alone and convert them back. This point is nowhere. Nowhere is found. Nowhere. Even in Shankara Vijayas, they talk in the beginning that Buddhism is prevalent and Shankara's avatara came for that. Later, there is no reference to Buddhism at all. Whole book talks about something else. So these are all Shankara Vijayas are simple forgeries. Forgeries means unauthentic. Unauthentic imaginary literature. Poetic literature with a lot of imaginations. Many of them are imaginations without any ground reality, historical reality. Okay. So Prasthanatarayi Bhashya is the only one. Coming to Gaudapada. Okay. Regarding Shankara, there was no much importance. Even I was challenged. It is some of the people, RSS people, they told me it is the Shankaracharya who wiped out Buddhism, had driven out Buddhism from India. I told, where is that? Yes, I know Shankaracharya. Where is that? He says, yes, it is there. Where is that? They have got their own internal literature. In fact, RSS literature is very little, but in that one book they say that Shankaracharya wiped out Buddhism. Even now some people, most of the people repeat the same thing. I've been telling again and again and again and again, I don't know. When will they understand? We don't know when will they understand, because we have no way of aggressive prachara, aggressive propaganda. We just explain and leave them. So people, those who are sincere, should find out the truth. Of course, we'll help them little bit in our own way. So it's going on. Some of the academic scholars also, having read Indian history, they found that why do they blame unnecessarily that Shankaracharya did it. Shankaracharya didn't take much interest in that, because Buddhism was not so prevalent. It was little bit, but Shankara didn't take much interest in them, just ignored. He found that it's not going to affect us, so he didn't say much. Okay, Shankaracharya is over. Next come to Gaudapada. What Swamiji says, let us see. Okay, even Gaudapada's work, the conflicting views of Buddhists have been, even Gaudapada's writing, were Buddhists the main opponent, main Purvapaksha for Gaudapadacharya? People say Gaudapada refuted Buddhism. Tell me, was he the chief? Gaudapada wrote Gaudapada Karika, Mandukya Karika. Karika means shlokas on Mandukya Upanishad. So there are 4 chapters. It consists of 4 chapters. First 3 chapters, there is no reference to Buddhism at all. In fact, he refutes many internal schools within Vaidika Dharma in the 2nd and 3rd chapter. In the first chapter, he devotes to comment on the Upanishad directly. Agama Prakarana. Anyway, we wanted to discuss Mandukya Upanishad Bhashya separately. Anyway, we will have, now I have to just let me take few more days and then plan my timetable and have regular classes. So anyway, in another 2 or 3 days, you will know my plan. Now, so one more English class may come. Mula Vidya Nirasa is also there. That is left incomplete. That also I should deal with it. Gaudapada Acharya wrote Mandukya Karika, which consists of 4 chapters. Some of you know these details, but I have to keep all the audience in view. So therefore, I have to deal certain things. Those who already know, please have patience or just ignore some of the points. Because some of you already know these points. So first chapter is a direct commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. In 2nd and 3rd, he deals with the internal deviations, distortions, misinterpretations within the Vedic tradition. He refutes them and restores the Advaita. Okay? In the second chapter and third chapter, that is Vaitatya Prakarana and Advaita Prakarana. Then coming to the last chapter alone, there he raises other schools to refute them, means non-Vedic. Others means outside the Vedanta. Non-Vedantic schools. So in non-Vedantic schools, there also Buddhism is not his main chief Purvapaksha. There also Vaisheshika he talks, Sankhya he talks. He discusses regarding Vaisheshika, Sankhya alone lot, then little bit of Buddhism. So he didn't give any much importance to Buddhism, and he didn't treat Buddhism as a main Purvapaksha, main rival of Advaita. He didn't treat that. There also Vaisheshika, Sankhya alone discussed much and little bit of Buddhism too. Okay. Therefore, here he says, see, Gaudapada work, the conflicting views of Buddhists. There are conflicting views within the Buddhists. That he touches them. But he touches in the fourth chapter. Not in his main book, main first 3 chapters, he doesn't touch them at all. If Buddhism was his main opposing school, then he should have dealt with it throughout his book, or at least more often. He never touched it, only in the last chapter. There also, after touching many other schools, partly little bit of Buddhism. Conflicting views of Buddhists have been relegated to the very last chapter. Okay? And it has been shown there. There also he says, he uses Buddhist arguments. While showing the arguments, 2 things he does. Shows the mistakes in their arguments, and few arguments he uses as an additional argument for Vedanta. He did not depend on Buddhistic arguments completely. He has shown them as little additional arguments. Okay? He took only Vedic arguments alone. That is Avastatraya Viveka. It has been shown there that while some of the Buddhistic speculations come into line with Vedantic reason, he says that some of the Buddhistic imaginations arguments come closer to Vedanta, but still they have not reasonably established Advaita. So they are unable to establish Advaita clearly with their arguments. On certain points they come closer, but still they fall short of completely establishing Advaita. Okay? Therefore he says, the doctrine of non-dual intuition of Atman was never referred to by Buddha. Naitad buddhena bhashitam. Buddha did not teach Advaita, Gaudapada's view. Okay? So, this 6th point is that Gaudapada's and Shankara's chief aim of their commentary is to refute Buddhism, which was prevalent at that time. This is a misunderstanding. And we have refuted, and Swamiji also, that how it is wrong. Okay, it is not true. Next comment to that. So first chapter is over. In the first chapter 1 to 6, okay, 6 misunderstanding we touched. Let me just say, for you to, I don't know whether I told you before or not, there are 60 misunderstandings. Okay, 70th is only a conclusion. 70th point is only a conclusion. 69 misunderstandings Swamiji refers. Probably 70th also. Maybe little bit, maybe 70, roughly let us take. There are 70 misunderstandings. So the first 6 in the first chapter are over. Those who are holding the book, I don't have to tell you all these details. Some people are not holding the book, therefore, for sake of them, I am telling all this thing. Those who hold the book, you can see them there, right there alone. Next point is 7th point. Second chapter, 7th point. Okay. Not second chapter, Swamiji has not divided them into chapters. But anyway, 7th, let us say directly, not chapters. Are they chapter system? No. Swamiji has not made any chapters. Okay, now the 7th point. I'll take little bit, another 5 minutes or so, not much. As I told you today, our session is going to be small. 7th misunderstanding is, it is not right to regard the Shankaras as only one more school to offer its own system. Okay? Shankara's Vedanta is not a system. This word is a system, is an English term. Means it is not a school of philosophy. School of philosophy, those who know already know, those who do not know, because I am addressing Indians also, many Indians to listen to them, us. So for them to clarify, I say a few words. System is based upon logic. Logically, you develop concepts, certain idea, goal, and all those things. So you develop a system. That means what is the cause of samsara, what is the nature of samsara, how do you get rid of samsara, what is the nature of the world, what is the nature of jiva, who is Ishvara, and ultimately what happens. All this, you have a certain concepts. All these concepts built based upon your logic, a philosophy. So Shankara did not build up philosophy. Building up philosophy is by arguments. By arguments, you establish a concept by argument. Okay? You have a what you say, an organized system of certain concepts. An organized system of concepts is called school of philosophy, a system. An organized system of concepts means the concepts don't contradict with each other. Within the system, those various concepts have an internal harmony. What is samsara? What is the cause of samsara? What is world? Who is jiva? What is God? Why and how he created the world? Okay? Then what is the goal of life? What are the obstacles in the goal of life? What is the sadhana for it? All these things. You have certain ideas. All those ideas are built up based upon argument. Arguments means logically. And those arguments should not contradict with each other. Okay? Internally, in your own concept of your system, should be in harmony with other concepts of the same system. See, one concept of one school of philosophy may not agree, may contradict with the similar concept of another system. But within the system, there should be convincing argument. If one concept and other concept should not contradict, there shouldn't be internal contradiction. In short, you have a set of concepts. A set of concepts, all these concepts put together build up a system. Only logically you argue and then develop them, those concepts, and those concepts should not contradict with each other. They should be in harmony with each other. This is called a system, as I understand anyway. There are some people who understand better than me. So both in India and outside India, there are many scholars who understand Vedanta better than me. But anyway, I present what I know. If there are anything wrong, you can read books. Swamiji's books are there. You can get corrected with the help of others. So here, This is a system. Has Shankara built up a system? They say Advaita system, they say. But Swamiji tries to say that Advaita is not a system. Means Advaita is not a philosophy built, a system of philosophy built by argument. If it is by argument, you can argue against it. You can refute it. You can disagree with it. You can have an alternative view for it. But Advaita is not a system you can argue, debate, refute, and then have your own alternative views. Because, see, brought out of the Upanishads by means of artifice of certain peculiar ways of interpretation. Okay? System means you have a certain way of interpreting Upanishads. You have got a certain way of see, Madhva has got one way of interpreting Upanishads. Ramanuja has got certain way of interpreting Upanishads. Then Nimbarka, Vallabha, even Sankhyas also, like Vijnana Bhikshu. He took Upanishad as a basis and interpreted in his own way. So they interpret Upanishads in their own way and develop a school. That school has got to defend. Shankaracharya neither builds up his Advaita system, Advaita philosophy based upon reason, nor he defends it based upon reason. Oh, you may wonder, you mean he is not logical? That is different. He is logical, is different. But you will understand it in the next sentence. You see them. He says, just like any other school, ancient and modern. For quite unlike other commentators in the Vedanta Sutras, because Shankaracharya's is not a system built with the help of the reason and defended by logic. No, because Shankara only points out your Anubhava. Shankara points out Anubhava. In order to help you to understand the Anubhava, he uses logic. Logic is the reason Shankaracharya uses is to help you to understand Anubhava. Examine your experiences. Examine your experiences and see them, which is an underlying, unnegatable, underlying, universal, unnegatable experience. Some are limited experiences, tentative experiences. Okay. So it is a broadest experience. It is a broadest experience means oneself. It is the broadest experience underlying all other experiences. It cannot be refuted by further examination. So that way, Shankaracharya's teaching is not developing a concept with the help of logic, but observing the experiences and discovering what is the all-pervasive underlying Anubhava by refuting a limited, superficial, tentative experiences. By refuting tentative experience, superficial, limited experiences, come to the limitless, infinite experience underlying all other experiences, which is irrefutable, undeniable. Undeniable, irrefutable Anubhava. You land in that Anubhava. Therefore, it is not a philosophy built by reason. Reason is used to help you, your mind think clearly, that's all. To think clearly, reason is used. But it is only the real teaching of Shankaracharya is examination of Anubhavas. That is a point. Otherwise, people think that it is only a logically built up. No. For example, Swamiji himself gives, take for example, Adhyasa. How Shankaracharya begins his Vedantic teaching, that is Sutra Bhashya with Adhyasa Bhashya. You mean, how does he explain Adhyasa, which is the cause of samsara? Not by logic. Means, it is not a theory. By logic, what happens? You get a theory. logically when you build a philosophy, it will be a philosophy, will be a such a system of philosophy will be full of theories harmonized with each other. Okay? With logic, when you build up, when you arrive at something, it will be a theory. So regarding Ishvara, there is a theory. Regarding world, there is a theory. Why God created, another theory. With what material he created, another theory. These are all various theories. Okay. How Jiva is born is another theory. So they develop the theories based upon reason. But Shankara, what is the cause of samsara? Why I am Jiva, Karta, Bhokta, suffering? Means undergoing both pain and pleasure and all these various experiences I am undergoing. I have a fear of death, worry, tension, all kinds of things I have got. Poverty, disappointment, frustrations, enemies, friends, good and bad and all these things. Health and ill health, all those things. Why? Why I have become Jiva? Why am I suffering as a Jiva? Now you have to give some theories. Okay? Each school of philosophy, Madhvas explain one theory, Ramanuja explains another theory, then Vijnana Bhikshu explains another theory. Like this, each one gives his own theory. These theories are not unanimously accepted by all schools of philosophy. They keep on disagreeing with one another, refuting one another. Why? How is the world created? See, very interesting. One example I tell you. How is the world created? Vaisheshikas say from the atoms world is created. World goes back, dissolves into atoms. Sankhyas say world is created from the Prakriti. Prakriti which is in its equilibrium state. Means the internal parts of Prakriti all are in equilibrium state. Means all the three are in equal proportion. If Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Guna, these three are divided into various parts and recombine in various proportions. When Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Guna divide into various parts, Sattva divides into various small units, Raja is into small unit, Tamas into small units, and they recombine in various proportions. Some proportion of Sattva, some proportion of Rajas, some proportion of Tamas. These three you combine, one object emerges. So the various proportions, the combination of Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas in various proportions is called Srishti. Okay. So world evolves from the Prakriti which was in its equilibrium state, comes to unequal, disproportionate, means in various proportions. This is their concept of creation. Then Mimamsakas say there is no creation at all. World always exists like this only. So internally there are some changes, modifications within the world. But world as a whole is never created. Who says? Mimamsakas. Strange fellows. I think there are so contradictions within the schools of philosophy. I think almost all the ideas of the world are found in so many schools, so many variations, so many differences of views. Different views within Indian philosophy alone. If you study them, you feel almost all the various thoughts are exhausted. Every idea you find every idea is in the world, somewhere you find in some manner, with a little deviation. Okay. Therefore, see how the world is created, from what material it is created. There are three schools. Which one is right? How do you decide? All the three are using logic only. Logically, they try to establish. But what does Shankaracharya say? Means what does Advaita say? Advaita doesn't build up a theory. Paramanus, have you seen the atoms from which the world is born? Are the Prakriti state? Okay. Or there is no creation at all, world always exists. So all these theories are built up based upon logic alone, logically built up. Then what does Shankaracharya say? Advaita says. Advaita doesn't develop a theory based upon logically. Then what does it do? It directly points out your anubhava. So adhyasa is a fact of life, which is inherently present in all jivas. You can look at it. Adhyasam puras. Adhyasa is an inherent condition of every jivas. Effortless. It's not an acquired state, but it is there in all of us. Okay? This is no theory. It's a directly pointing out anubhava. Universal, which nobody can deny. Therefore, he says, adhyasa. He points out adhyasa. Adhyasam puraskritya, your jiva state, that you are a jiva, jivahood is due to adhyasa. Pramanas means knower, known, knowledge, this relationship. Then karta, karma, then bhokta, bhogya, all these things are within adhyasa. So thus, Shankara appeals to universal intuition. It doesn't build up a theory with the help of reason. See that this is the contrast. I repeat some of the points because some people need it because it may not catch their attention. So when second time, third time when I say it will be planted in their mind, and I hope they remember. Therefore, here Shankaracharya did not build up a theory with the help of reason, but points out the anubhava, undeniable, unnegatable, universal anubhava he touches. Atma, Anatma, a mutual exchange of their natures and their qualities. Their natures as well as qualities. Mutual exchange of them. Okay. This adhyasa everybody finds in one's life. Here, what is that theory here? Adhyasa is not a theory. It's a fact of life. Shankaracharya is only pointing out. There is no theory. Okay? This is a very interesting point. After conclusively showing, see, this adhyasa is the root cause of all our jivahood, karmas, struggles, desires, struggles, frustrations, disappointments, and all kinds of things. So what is the root? Adhyasa is the root. It is directly pointing out our anubhava. Or due to this natural tendency of the human mind. Adhyasa is a natural tendency. It's not an acquired character. It is instinctively there, naturally there in everybody, which nobody can deny. Okay. Or due to this natural tendency of the human mind, he claims that the main purport of the Upanishads, otherwise known as Vedantas, is to reveal the wisdom which finally sublates this avidyarna science. So this misunderstanding, this adhyasa has to be sublated, falsified. Means it has to be understood as false. False means it doesn't exist in your real nature, but at certain level it appears as if that is true. But if you watch yourself deeply, no, you are free from all these qualities. Okay, so this is Vedanta's, is not a theory. Vedanta is not a theory, but it is only pointing out, help you to observe the anubhava and discover it. That's all. Next point, I think in 1 minute I'll finish saying something. The student of Shankara's procedure in interpreting the Upanishads would do well. See, the students of Advaita, students of Shankaracharya will do well if you pay your attention to this particular quotation which Swamiji often uses in the second sutra, Janmadhyasya Yataha. In second Brahma Sutra, Swamiji, Bhashakara says, Shankaracharya at one place, Na dharma jignasa yami vashrutyadayeva pramanam Brahma jignasa. In Brahma jignasa, in inquiry, in investigation into Brahman, what is that helping point which helps you, which guides you, directs your observation, directs your self-inquiry? What is the principle you are supposed to use in observing, in examining the truth? He says, dharma, like in dharma jignasa, means karma kanda, like in the investigation of Karma Kanda, only Shruti alone is not enough. In Karma Kanda, Shruti statement, they don't look at its meaning. They don't look at its logical tenability, logical validity. Just because Vedas say it, accept it. That's all. So this is not accepted by Shankaracharya. He says in Dharma Jignasa, that kind of that validity of Veda Vakyas in revealing Dharma, Punya, Papa, Paraloka, Swarga, that might be okay. But however, in Brahma Jignasa, no theory works. It is only an Anubhava. Point out the Anubhava. Kim tu Shrutyadayo Anubhava. So Shruti's guidance is there. But that guidance has to be understood. Means this guidance should be only helping you to understand in your Anubhava. Shrutyadayo Anubhavadasya yathasambhavamiha pramanam. Shruti and also Anubhava, these two go together. Yathasambhavamiha pramanam. Anubhava, because this culmination, this vichara culminates in the discovery of Atma as oneself. Culminates in Anubhava Rupa Jnanam. Bhutavastu Vishayatvacha Brahma Vijnanasya. Because Brahma Vijnana is not a theory. It is a direct intuition, direct awakened state. That's all. Therefore, no other commentator, Swamiji adds one point, interesting point. No other commentator other than Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, Madhva, Nimbarka, Vallabha, Arya Samaji, many other people, all of them, no other commentator of Badarayana Sutras, that is Brahma Sutras, has accepted this maxim. This maxim means this rule in his interpretation of Upanishadic text. This rule that Anubhava is also important. That means you watch the Anubhava and establish your Vedanta. Not as a theory with the help of the reason. No theories in Vedanta. All of them are directly facts. You face the facts and discover them. So this is the uniqueness, contribution of Shankaracharya. So if you miss it, then you will not be different from all other schools. Okay, so today 6th and 7th, 2 misunderstandings we have corrected, and the next misunderstanding is 8th and 9th. We will see in the next class. Okay, 8th and 9th. Some of the points I have repeated. I am sorry for 2 reasons. One is, it is my nature of repeating, it's my weakness. Second is, there are some Vidyarthis who need this, it helps them to get clarity. And third is, those who are intelligent, understanding quickly in one statement, they don't need my elaboration, my explanation. Okay? And such people, I know, they feel very bored, disturbed, uncomfortable with my repetition. Please forgive me and bear with me. So as I told you, 2 reasons. So you take the basic point, and when I elaborate and repeat it, just ignore them. Take the essential point, and that is enough. You got it already. More intelligent people, more learned people require more patience. More learned you are, more intelligent you are, you understand quickly in one attention. And then you require a lot of patience to listen to the teaching, because teaching addresses all the sadhakas of various levels. So we have to cater to the other students who are less intelligent and less capable of understanding by repeatedly telling the same point from different angles. He gets it. So we have to address the other students also, therefore the repetition. Okay, 6th and 7th points are over. Now we will tell the 8th, 9th. I think 8th and 9th. 8th, 9th, 2 points enough, I think. That big enough. because 9th takes time, 8th also takes time. So therefore, in the next class, only 8th and 9th alone will be able to do, and the 10th and others will be in the next class. Okay, but in the next class, 8th and 9th. We finish it today, 6th and 7th misunderstand. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om Tat Sat.